All right. So I'm super happy to be here, and I'm so thankful for the invitation. This is actually my first time in Lithuania. So my first visit to the wonderful country. I've really been looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I'll only be here for 2 days, but next time around, I'm gonna stay even longer because I've heard you have some really nice places to visit. So I'm really looking forward to that. But today's agenda and the reason why I'm here to talk to you today is because I want to share with you what is the bank doing when it comes to artificial intelligence, and how does that matter, and why should everybody think that that's the greatest thing since bread came sliced. But just to give you a little bit of an introduction to who I am and why I'm standing here in front of you, other than the fact that I work as the CAIO and head of GenAI at the bank. Before I came to the bank, I had a couple of other opportunities to work with AI in different capacities. You'll see a couple of logos up here, but one of those notably would be the Top Denmark. That's now a part of If Insurance. I was the CIO and part of the executive committee there, and we were actually the first company to ever produce a completely GenAI autonomous robot directed to customers without any human intervention. We did that all the way back in March of 24. Now what that translates into is a lot of battle scars. I've been there, I've done that, I tried it, it was a lot of fun, it was a lot of hassle, it was super difficult, and the market has obviously evolved a lot since then. Previously, I was at a company called Nexi, Nets. That is a payment infrastructure, and payment infrastructure, coincidentally, Danske Bank was one of our customers. That company provides infrastructure for payments between merchants and banks and financial institutions. And what is really interesting in that space is machine learning algorithms. So that's all the deterministic workflows that we currently have within a lot of companies, whereas the stuff we did at Top Denmark, that was very much generative. And it's going to be the last part that I will focus on today during this next 25-minute update for you before we go into Q&A. I want to give you the reason why we think that AI matters. I'm sure that everyone here has their own opinions on why it's maybe good, maybe bad, why it's important, but I want to tell you why we think that this is going to be revolutionizing, not only for us as a bank, but for society as a whole. And I want to inspire you a little bit afterwards to have you contemplate the concept of digital labor. Now, in very short, I'll take you through what it means for us and how we actually see teams becoming hybrids between human beings and agents, and how those will be working together in the future. And then of course I'll finishing off by saying how do we think that this will impact the bank, and why should you definitely come and join us and apply for every single position that we have at the bank. Anyway, moving on. So one of the things that's been happening in the market, and there are so many different proof points to the argumentation why AI is important, but I'll give you some of those that I find mostly relevant. Now, a lot of tech gets introduced into market, and you'll typically see it gets adopted at varying degrees of rapidness. But what is definitely always the case is that it produces at different speeds. Now, what you'll see here in front of me is an error, which is really cool because that shows that we're live. So that's nice. What this graph will tell you behind the error message is that we have many different technologies. And by the way, this screen here doesn't work, just FYI. But what you'll see here in front of you is that amongst all the different technologies that has been introduced over the last couple of years, the most rapidly growing tech out there is GenAI, as introduced by OpenAI a couple of years ago. Now, it only took them 60 days to get to 100 million users on their platform, compared to all the other stuff that we've seen, which also has been growing exponentially. So this is telling us that we really have something special in our hands, and most importantly, our customers have something incredibly powerful and interesting in their hands, because we're seeing this grow at an absolutely unprecedented rate. So if you take those 60 days and you say, okay, well, so they just ChatGPT alone, they went to 100 million users in 60 days. Where is just that single platform now actually operating? Well, by October 2025, they had 800 million users. And of course, as you know, this is just one of the many vendors who provide these types of capabilities. But 800 million users, that is 10% of the world's population, then add on top of that, and they accumulate approximately 50 to 60% of the combined addressable base. So if you add on top of that, then you have maybe 20% of the world's population using generative AI. Now, that is a technology that is advancing beyond anything that we've seen before. And that's important for us as a bank, and it's important for every single company and also for us as consumers, because it means that the technology is going from being just a technology to something that is being embedded into the way that we do our daily lives and everything that we interact with. So we did a little bit of an analysis, and we thought, let's try and see just some of the most popular apps. Because we understand, of course, as a bank, and we want to be sure that we work at the cutting edge, but we also understand that some technologies are not created equal. What you see here are just a few of the apps that have embedded generative AI inside of them, meaning that when you interact with them, you're actually leveraging generative AI. Now, what we believe this is important for is that our customers are using this technology already today in all the interactions that they currently have, and it's only going to grow. There's probably not a single vendor out there that is going to provide you an application or a service and not embed some type of generative AI. Can we as a bank actually say that we want to provide any type of services without providing these types of capabilities? I would argue that no, we can't, and I would also argue that no other company would be able to, because it has now become a cultural phenomenon that is embedded in everything that we do and everything that our customers are doing. And of course we have a lot of private customers, but we also have a lot of business customers. But businesses are comprised of people, and people use generative AI. Therefore, the expectations to us as a bank is that our customers will require these services from us. Now that's important, because if you ever want to work with technology, if you want to be in a company and you want to grow those skills, you want to work with a company that understands that this is absolutely pivotal for the future ahead. Now, I brought along a friend. Maybe that's a little bit of an overstatement, but at least somebody who I admire a great deal and who has a fantastic way of impacting our company. It's this guy. That's the CEO of our company. Now, I asked before I brought this, and it's okay for me to do it. So he went on LinkedIn on the 15th of September, and he said, "The internet gave us online banking. Yeah. Smartphones gave us consumer banking and services in our pockets. But still, I have a very strong conviction that GenAI will be the biggest game changer that I have seen in my 25 years in finance." Why is this so important? This is important because at the very top of the house, in the bank, we have a CEO and a chief executive officer who says, "I believe this technology is going to change the world. I believe that this technology is going to change our company and the way that we do business." We couldn't wish for, in my line of business, a stronger advocate for what it is that we're doing. But I brought this quote to also show you that the bank means it when we say that this is going to be an absolutely transformative capability for us. And we believe it is going to be that for society. So if we take all of that and we say, so if we put it into a concept, how do we apply it? How do we work with it at Danske Bank? One of the things that I find extremely interesting is to try and become a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe philosophical about it, but we want to try and deconstruct what's going on in the market. So what we've said is, let's try and deconstruct a human being. What you'll see here is our pretty good attempt at doing that. Of course, there's many ways to do it, and there's a lot of facets. We know we as human beings, we have a different mechanics, but what we try to say is that a human being can perceive, right? We have senses, we can interpretate signals, we can see our environment, and we can take all of that information in. We can also remember, so we can remember if we're in a conversation, but we can also remember what happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 days ago, 5 seconds ago. We have short-term, we have long-term memory. We have a lot of history behind us that we're carrying with us everywhere we go. We can also infer things. We can look between the lines, we can read between the lines, and we have a great way of kind of navigating uncertainty and figuring out how to reason ourselves through our daily lives. And then of course we have emotions. Sometimes it can be a good day, it can be a shit day, it can be all that stuff. And we also have, our underlying motivations. Why are we doing things? The reasons how we were raised and how we were raised up during our childhood, but also the reason why we've been putting jobs and why we're doing things. And then of course, ultimately, we can do things with all of that information. We can go out there and we can act. That's pretty unique up until a couple of years ago. So what we said is, let's try and put this into the formula of an agent, of artificial intelligence, because what we're trying to do is that we're trying to replicate a human being. Maybe not fully, but we're trying to replicate the capability of understanding anything and doing any action. It sounds very grand, but the ultimate end state of what we're trying to build is that place. So we said, okay, well, what do we need to have perception? We need large language models. We need to be capable of understanding images, sounds, audio, all that stuff. You're already engaging with it today when you upload pictures or have conversation with the GPT or any of the many apps that you just saw a couple of minutes ago. We have our vector databases, we have embeddings, we have short-term memory that's built into the conversations when we have interactions with the robots and the agents. But we also have long-term memory, meaning that we can recollect conversations and outcomes and actions taken a long time ago, and we can learn from those, and we can improve our models. So now we have the memory thing as well. And then what we've begun building are agents that have reasoning capabilities. So we're building agents within the bank that are taking information in, but not necessarily having very specific outlines as to how to solve the problems. We're letting them figure it out by themselves. Now, for those of you who know a lot about agentic AI, you'll recognize that this is where things get complicated. When you give a robot tools and capabilities and the ability to act upon instructions and input without actually telling it what to do, that's both when the world becomes magical, but also when complexity rises and uncertainty and accuracy also becomes things to keep very much in top of mind. And then, of course, to make sure that we have the underlying motivation, we're building in actioning, objectives, feedbacks into those models, so we continuously give them the reason for why they're doing things. And then, of course, with APIs, execution layers, tools, capabilities, we're providing them with the option to action what it is that they're figuring out. And you might say, so what does that actually mean? So do you have that kind of stuff? And I'll get back to that in just a couple of seconds. But what we want to ask ourselves is, we're already now at a place where we can emulate a human being. It's not technology that's preventing us from doing that. It is how great are we at building the robot? What kind of data can we put into the robot, and how can we make sure that we learn it to do the right things? And then everything else is basically just tech. That's not to say that it's easier or we can do it tomorrow, or that it's in any way something that's going to be perfectly solved tomorrow. No, but what we do know is that in 2 years, will we have a perfect AI, so AGI, artificial general intelligence, that can replace any human being in any position? No, probably not. What about 5 years? What about 10 years? Oh, what about 20 years? Do we have it then? And I'm pretty sure that some of you along those numbers thought, yeah, probably. And what is interesting is that if any of you have children, and I do, they will be born into a world where artificial general intelligence will have come to a point where they will be competing with AI in a completely different way than what we are. If you know something is going to happen, you have an obligation to react to it. You have an obligation to begin to prepare for the eventuality of something happening. And that's what we're doing at the bank. We're taking that seriously. Even though we don't know exactly when we'll end up there, we know that we will end up there. So we need to do something about it. So just a quick example of, and I'll show you some real things that we're actually doing in the bank. But when you have those tools capable, what we're trying to achieve is not to have chat assistants that can play back information to you eloquently. No, we're trying to build agentic AI that is capable of taking the questions that you have, and actually operate tools to produce products. And you want to have that full chain, that end-to-end value chain, because otherwise you still need humans in the loop. So here we just have a case of a user that wants a memorandum for a company that's going for an upcoming IPO. It could be anything, and we have lots of examples of this. And you decide how, when you build this, what type of tools you want to give the agent so that it can do the things that it needs to do. And the wonderful thing here is that you can always put in abstraction layers. So imagine you have an agent which is great at building Excel files or reports or PowerPoints. And then on the other hand, you have some agent which is very good at conversational things. If you want to tie all that together, you don't really have to do a whole lot of magic. You just put in an orchestrator in front of that and have that give that connections to all the different tools that you then have. Now that adds complexity, but you have the option to do it. Then you just have to solve for the complexity that you're introducing and the accuracy in what it is that you're building. So in other words, we believe that agents are the future. We believe that agents can act, and we believe that we can organize these agents. So for us, the question then becomes, how do we then connect them in networks? How do we connect them in teams? And how do we connect them so that we can interact with our human colleagues to the same extent that we are with our agentic colleagues? In fact, I would go so far as to say that we're probably the last generation of people who will only be dealing with other people. The world has already shown us that we're beginning to engage with agents, and that is only going to become more and increasingly as time progresses. Gone are the days where you're only connecting with human beings. Now, I wanted to just share with you another quote, which I find quite interesting. This is Theos. He is from an organization called INSEAD. And Theos, he's a great guy. He's Greek. He knows a lot of stuff around AI, but he also has some pretty bold statements. And one of them he made was, in 10 years' time, he believes that AI will create $20 trillion in value. Who knows, right? Who knows? But what is absolutely sure is that the technology will continue to rise, and the powers to be will try and maximize that value. I mean, just look at how basically the world economy right now is being driven by NVIDIA. All right? If NVIDIA has a bad day, we all have a bad day. You can call that an AI bubble, and it may burst, but once it bursts, what will happen is that new things will form, and you will have taken out all the trash and only left the quality behind. But the question becomes, if we as people, both in your careers and in how you invest yourself, but also as companies, how do you position yourself to grab that value? If you know it's there and it's going to happen, you have an obligation to act upon it, including you as people and as employees. You have an obligation to act upon the knowledge that you know is there. So I welcome you all to spend time in AI if you're not already doing it, because I and we believe that that is going to be a very central part of the future. I wanted to show you that at the bank, we don't just talk about it. We are actually building these systems. And I promise I won't go through all of these. But what we have at the bank are 100 dedicated people that centrally work with embedding generative AI in solutions every single day. We build products, we engineer them, we make sure that they're implemented responsibly, ethically, with considerations to risk and compliance, because we're a bank and we want to do good by society. So we're doing all these things and we're implementing them almost, I would say, every single week. Our roadmap is ever increasing, and the company across are already leveraging these capabilities. Now, I want to show you just a couple of them that maybe will give you a little bit of a better view as to what it is that we're doing. Now, you'll see here on the left, we built something called Danske GPT. A lot of companies are doing that, especially in the beginning where you couldn't just take off the shelf a really good assistant for general purpose applications. So we built Danske GPT. It's our version of ChatGPT, but it's much more than that. It's embedded into our systems. It's capable of helping you code. It's capable of helping you navigate HR systems. It's capable of understanding pictures and tables and complicated information and providing you input based on that. It has multiple models attached to it, so you can choose if you want to use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever you want. We have multiple models because we want to make sure that we don't get pigeonholed into a singular type of technology and or trained data. So we provide multiple models for that. I can tell you that 25% of the 20,000 people at Danske use this solution every single day. And I'll show you at the end a slide where we also combine this with Copilot, because that's our general purpose productivity tools. And you'll see that we have come quite a far ways in terms of adopting these things. Now, we've also recently introduced to our customers in our mobile bank an AI-enabled chat robot. So now our customers, when they open up their phones or their mobile banking, they can actually connect with an assistant that can help them with all the things present in that universe. Now, what that means is that we have internally facing stuff and we have externally facing stuff. The good thing about being a bank is that when you put these things into an ecosystem that is behind a login, people are less prone to try and break it, because we can easily see who is trying to break it. But that's not going to last forever, because these services, they will be going on the broader web, meaning that they will be available to a lot of people, even though they're not logged in. And then, just as another example, I think everyone has tried maybe once or twice to ask HR a question or navigate complicated documentation or doing stuff like that. So of course we've created a robot as well that is capable of helping in that space. It's just to give you a little bit of a flavor as to what this actually is for us. Most importantly for us, we have focused a lot on adoption. Now we're at a place where we want to see value. But you have to do the first one first. You have to have people use the tools that you provide them before you can actually derive value from them. And that's the phase that the bank is currently in. I promised you a slide here, and especially here in Lithuania, we have very, very good employees who are helping us do this every single day. And we're very, very proud of the work that they're doing. You'll see here, across of several weeks, across of our Danske GPT and our Copilot, and we have several good people here representing that capability, we're now seeing that we have almost 3/4 or more than 3/4 of the company using these tools on a regular basis. Now that number in and of itself tells you a very specific thing. It tells you that the company has adopted these capabilities and they're using them rapidly. And that's important because that goes to show that as a company you have to do all the things. You have to have the technical capabilities, you have to build the solutions. People need to use them, and you need to have leadership that is also supportive of us doing these types of things. And I think that the bank is actually in a very unique position to deliver on the promises that we're seeing in the market. Right, so I'm going to leave you with, before we go into Q&A, which I still think we have time for, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a video where we will introduce you to some of the colleagues that we have at the bank and to hear just a short bit about their story. So please go ahead and start that video.
I've never been so excited for working as I do now. And I say that honestly, not to promote GenAI in Danske Bank.
With AI nowadays, I automate a lot of things. Once you get the taste of it, you can't go back.
It is a cultural shift. Either you are a front runner or you're behind.
The process before GenAI basically would start from a blank sheet. Now we can start with a sentence, and within a span of 30 minutes to an hour, we can create lots of content we can start evaluating, discussing from.
I'm more energized doing tasks because they don't seem so complicated anymore, right? Because I have a starting point.
There was a lot of manual things. I was doing some things which I don't like, let's say like writing documentation. Now with the help of AI, it does it really quickly, it does it professional way.
Danske GPT saved the day when we had to redraw
an application target architecture. The tool that was used is in Python, and I don't know Python code. But Danske GPT, with some specific prompting, was able to help me write the code, which then created the diagrams which we used in the client presentation.
I actually do think that I sleep better at night because I know that I have Danske GPT on my backbone. Sometimes you just need kind of a fresh mind, and I can get to do that every morning, knowing that I have Danske GPT as my sparring partner.
The limiting factor is no longer your laptop, your knowledge of computing, computer languages, etc. It is your capability or your ability to come up with the ideas you want to realize. That's the limiting factor. The ability to execute on these ideas are practically eliminated right now.
It doesn't do the job for me, but it helps me become better at what I do best.
Fantastic. Very good. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kasper, for a great presentation. We are now open for questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hands, and we will make our way to you with a microphone.
Nice. That was quick.
Hello.
Hello.
I just have a short question. Like, it's artificial intelligence as currently perceived as in the future we might compete with it. But the question is, are we really going to compete with it? For example, if I'm buying Meta glasses, so does it mean that I'm going to compete with Meta glasses who can do calculations better, or just buy it for another reason, like expecting some assistance?
So if I can just repeat your question, and if I get it all wrong, then let me know. The way that I hear your question is, will we be competing against a lot of other companies who are providing these services?
No, like, I mean, maybe the future with artificial intelligence is meant to assist humans instead of just competing and replacing them.
Yeah. I think so. I think that we will be in a situation where it's going to be both. So we will see assistance to human beings, but in many cases, what has happened over centuries is as we move through food technology, it replaces the work that we have done previously. And I think we're very cognizant in the bank to the fact that a lot of the work that we have been doing previously, well, we won't be doing it in the future, but we don't necessarily see that as a bad thing or as a we don't want humans. We see it as an evolution that we will then stand upon the shoulders of that evolution and have the humans that we have work with other things and new things. I think I usually have an example where I say, we don't see a lot of farmers plowing the fields with horses. They have moved on and they've become more effective and more productive. And but that doesn't mean that we don't need farmers. They're just doing different things.
Yeah, okay, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Considering the AI adoption rate by, let's say, small to medium enterprises, from your professional prediction, do you think that businesses are adopting the use of generative AI into their processes? For example, based on like the 2024 labor market outlook of British Columbia, it shows that only 6% of businesses have adopted AI, and like 68% are not even considering adopting AI. So that's like a far cry from what I would expect. So do you think that the adoption rates are meeting your expectations, and are they rapidly increasing according to how you would assume? Or are we being over ambitious because of, I'm sure you know the challenges that are involved in integrating AI and adopting it into your daily business workflow?
Thank you. That's a very intelligent question. I think, if you look at the market in general, you have a multitude of different types of companies, and I think companies are adopting AI at different speeds. Geographies are adopting AI at different speeds, and sectors and societies are adopting it at different speeds. Now, I'll get back to what if I think that that's high enough or too low. the bank here has taken the approach that we're trying to get to what we call the clear blue waters as soon as possible. And the clear blue waters for us is where we don't compete with anybody else. Because if you take something like banking, there's a lot of different banks out there, and we're roughly providing the same type of services. But if we enable with AI and create new solutions, new interaction models with our customers, and if we're the first there, then we will be there alone for a duration of period when we can build relationship with customers, we can build our brands, and we can begin to reap the benefits of that environment without the competition. So that's the reason why we're trying to push it so quickly. Do I then believe personally or professionally that other companies are adopting too slow? Yes, but I also believe that there's very high difference between companies who have the capabilities of doing it, like the bank here, versus the small to medium enterprises, which don't have those capabilities. What they are forced to do is that they are forced to wait until the vendors and suppliers of the software that they use within their company get around to producing these types of solutions so that it comes embedded in everything that they do. So imagine you have an accounting system or a web page and you're selling your services. They will have to wait until the standardized package from a web page or a web shop comes with an AI assistant that connects to your logistics system and to your warehouse and to your stock inventory and your finance system, because they can't build it themselves. But the unfortunate thing about it is that then they will have to compete with everybody else who has the same outlook, and that's a shame. So if you have any option and any capability of getting on board as quick as possible, then that is definitely the recommendation. We also see it just with large companies, multi-global companies, when they go to market and they tell about what they're producing in terms of services or products. If they're not talking about AI, they get slammed by the investors and the analysts immediately once they've done with their presentation. So there's a lot of expectation there, and I think it's important that we try and meet it. I hope I answered the question. Otherwise, catch me afterwards. Cool. I think there's a question over here. Where somebody's running to you.
Good run. So my question is, for you as a bank, what are the biggest challenges in adopting AI? And the second question, do you think you already know about all the challenges in adopting AI?
I don't want to commit hubris here. I think to the last part, I think we actually have so I'm pretty confident in the last part of the question. Do we know all the challenges? We know of all the regulatory, the compliance, the risk, the technical challenges. I think we have those pretty good understanding of that, but that's mechanical. The thing that we don't know yet is how will we as an organization and as a culture react and adapt to a world where we will be connected more with agentic AI and agents than we are today. Now, I think we can all have assumptions and we can think that that's going to be okay or it's going to work out fine. But if you look across our bank with 20,000 employees, with varying degrees of seniority and age and cultural background and all that, and work, right? I'm fairly confident that we have not seen the last challenges, to your point, because some will react differently. Some will embrace it and I think this is the greatest thing, and some will say, it's going to be over my dead body. And I think that challenge we have not unlocked yet. So the people side is probably going to be the biggest challenge. Yeah. Good question.
We only have time for one more, so
it's going to be the best question.
I mean, all of them are great questions.
Yeah. We have one here in the middle.
Here we go.
So there was an MIT study about investments in AI, and there was a statement that 95% of investments in AI didn't bring any value and any return. So the first question is, are you already seeing some return on investment? And the second question, what would be your advice to be in those 5%? How to achieve that?
Yeah, I think everybody, including my grandma, has seen that study, right? It was everywhere, and it got pushed into media like it was the ultimate truth. And I saw a lot of companies going out and saying, especially software vendors, right? They went out there and say, if you don't want to end up as 95% of everybody who fails, then buy our software. I think that study had a lot of flaws. I won't go into why that is. But I think if you look at it from a practical point of view, the first steam locomotives that were introduced, right, the first cars, the error rate was pretty high, right? And equally so with this kind of stuff. We're experimenting, we're trying out new stuff. Not everything is going to work. And it's very important that everything doesn't work, because if everything worked the first time you tried it, you are not being ambitious enough. And that's how we see it. And we have within the bank, we have an innovation lab. We have a lot of people which only job is to try and find the crazy ideas that our colleagues within the business has, and then trying to bring it to life. And sometimes that fails. I can tell you that our failure rate in what we do is probably below 10%. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is because we have a framework of how we do it. So when we have a use case, we actually evaluate it and we say, can we achieve this? We build the technology, we validate it with the business that we're doing the case for, and then if it's good, then we put it into production. But it's a pretty rigorous process that has a lot of structure around it. And I think the reason why so many companies, they fail is because they're happy-go-lucky, right? They're not really putting it into a formula. You're just saying, you go out there and try, right? Let 1,000 flowers bloom, when in reality, you want to be a little bit more selective in what you do and consider what you're doing. And that's probably the biggest issue why they fail, is because they're not directing that energy. And when you don't direct the energy, it's very difficult to succeed with it, because energy is everywhere, right? It doesn't get hot if you don't focus the sunlight into a single spot. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you very much, Kasper.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. It's a pleasure. Do you want this?